I taught in Dharavi, Mumbai for 2 years as a Teach for India fellow. During our community visit one day, I was at Wasim's house, a student of mine. His younger sister, about 5 years of age, kept peeking at me from behind the curtain, but would not come talk to me. Now, when you spend 10 hours a day, 6 days a week in a school, you come to recognize every student, at least by face. I could not place Wasim's sister. So in casual conversation, I asked his mother if Wasim helps her with her studies. She replied saying, there was no need to. She's not in the same school as Wasim. She's enrolled in a vernacular medium. Now Wasim's family was fairly stable financially. I knew that the affordability of school fees could not have been an issue. So obviously I asked her why. She said, she's a girl. What will she do studying English? I was stunned and at a loss of words. Here was a 5-year-old whose life was being preconditioned to failure. Assumptions made about her intelligence and potential only and only on the basis of her gender. Through my time teaching, I came to realize that this was very common. Sons were put into private schools, but daughters were put into public. Sons were put into English medium, while daughters were put into vernacular. The more time I spent in Dharavi, the more I started to realize this blatant bias towards sons in India. Now, I'm not naive. I've always been aware of this stubborn notion of what society thinks is within a girl's reach and what isn't, even in my own family. But it was only over the last 4 years that I did truly understand the harmful repercussions of these preconceptions on girls. Every day was a new learning for me. Girls are always asked to dream, but never too big. Up until the age of 14, every girl is asked the most cliché question in the book. So what do you want to be when you grow up? She says, doctor. The father claps, everyone smiles. But as soon as she turns 15, that question changes. It changes to, so when do you want to settle down and make your father happy? Her dream of becoming a doctor hasn't been accomplished. And what makes her happy might not be the same thing that make her father happy. But for girls, these childhood dreams have an expiration date. And as soon as she reaches the threshold, she must rewire according to what the society wants her to become. For girls, it's very simple advice. You always must compromise and adapt. This one day I was sitting in my principal's office, which had the total number of students enrolled in secondary school, bifurcated into boys and girls, and written on a board. In grade 5, the ratio was almost equal. There were 27 girls to 30 boys. But as I started to move my gaze upwards, I noticed that the number of girls kept diminishing. And at grade 10, there were 11 girls to 40 boys. The largest jump being between grade 8 and grade 9. It was a no-brainer. That is when girls start their period. Now, I do not and will not ever understand this taboo around menstruation. Why we can't talk about it and are forced to hide it from every man. Men themselves urinate in public places in India. Nothing to hide in that. Menstruating for me is as natural as urinating. Menstruation is nature. And nature does not discriminate on the basis of moral character. It's not like all the bad girls go through this impure ordeal and all the good girls are pure and pristine. So what I do not understand is that it's not like when I get my period, it's on show that I'm evil or everyone knows my dark secrets. It's nature and it does not discriminate. So why should I have to hide it? Is it just because men don't experience it? What scares me is just how women cannot win this battle against this ridiculous taboo. Menstruation is a sign of fertility. So if young girls do not start their cycle at puberty, they might be infertile and are penalized for being barren. On the other hand, if they do start menstruating, they're expected to hide it. Never let their father, brother, or any male friend know. The thing is that the minute you ask your daughter to hide it, it's almost in her head, it's almost like she's done something wrong. And you're putting her through that guilt for 1 week, every month, every single year. Can you imagine the psychological impact of that on girls? Only 12% of the women in India use sanitary pads. That percentage for Japan is 100. For China, it is 64. And for Indonesia, it's 88. It is 12 for India. Due to the high cost of menstrual hygiene products, a large proportion of women in Dharavi use old unsanitized cloth cut out from saris and other outfits. I spoke to a few of the mothers and I asked them how they clean these rags. They told me they clean it with soap and water. Fair enough. But because blood stains don't go, and obviously men cannot see period-stained cloth, they're forced to wrap these rags in a towel and hide it in covert places, like underneath their bed or underneath their bathroom sink. To make matters worse, women actually often use each other's rags. When I wrote the script for this talk, I asked a couple of my friends to read it. All of them replied saying I should delete this one part because it was too explicit and it made them cringe. I decided to keep it because while it might be difficult for us to hear, this is someone's reality. And all of this because apparently men cannot see period blood, so girls must compromise and adapt. Nivedita Menon, in her book, Seeing Like a Feminist, wrote of what would happen if men menstruated instead of women. I'd like to read a snippet of that out. It goes, what would happen, for instance, if suddenly, magically, men could menstruate and women could not? The answer is clear. Menstruation would become an enviable, boast-worthy, masculine event. Men would brag about how long and how much. Boys would mark the onset of their menses that longed for proof of manhood with religious ceremonies and stag parties. Sanitary supplies would be federally funded and free. Military men, right-wing politicians, and religious fundamentalists would cite menstruation as proof that only men could serve in the army. You have to give blood to take blood. To occupy political office, can women be aggressive without that steadfast cycle governed by the planet of Mars? To be priests and ministers, how can women know what it is like to give our blood for our sins? Or to be rabbis? Without the monthly loss of impurities, women remain unclean. The truth in this one paragraph is astounding. I wonder how many men would actually admit that this is the closest to if men menstruated. I started a social project called Mukti to teach girls in low-income communities about menstruation. As a part of protocol, I called all the mothers just to inform them of what I'm going to be teaching their daughters. Out of the 32 women that turned out for my session, only 4 knew what menstruation was. 4 out of 32 women. These were mothers, women with at least one child, but had no idea why they got their period. This was a shock to me. A bigger shock came when a few of them refused to let me teach their pubescent daughters about it. Apparently, their daughters didn't need to know what their reproductive organs were or how they function. It was enough for them to know Mata aayi hai, which is what they call the period in Dharavi. Mata aayi hai translates into the mother god is in her. The mother god is in her, but she's impure. She cannot enter places of worship, and she cannot touch religious books. But the mother god is in her. Makes complete sense, doesn't it? At that point, I realized that a big part of what is stopping women from progressing is women. A lot of the mothers I spoke to had this tit-for-tat attitude. They were forced to get married at 15, had children at 16, and have served their mother-in-law all their life. Now it was their turn to relax. So there was no way that their daughter or daughter-in-law was taking any other route that jeopardized this permanent vacation plan that they had. The social status of having a son goes straight to women's head in India. They forget about their own times of when they hated seeing their father struggle to pay the dowry, or they resented their mother-in-law for being unreasonably biased. According to some women, they went through it, and so will the next generation of girls. Things will never change with this attitude. And more importantly than anyone else, mothers have a huge part to play in bringing about this revolution. My friend Sarva, who is also the co-founder of Mukti, recently visited one of her students, Vishal, whose father had passed away. Vishal and his father were walking up to the terrace one night. There were no lights. His father tripped and fell off the edge. Right in front of Vishal, his father died. When Sarva arrived at his place, his mother took her aside and told her that Vishal had been acting up ever since. He had been beating his younger sister in a fit of rage every single day since the death. Vishal is 11 and his younger sister is 6. Here we have a boy who has barely seen life, but his instinct to deal with trauma is to beat his younger sister up. That little girl has also lost her father, which she might not have truly understood yet, is probably confused on why there are so many people in her house, and to make it worse, her brother beats her up for reasons that he didn't before. But she's a girl, so she must compromise and adapt. I was in tears when Sarva told me about this. We as a society really need to introspect on what are we saying, teaching, or doing that an 11-year-old instinctively relieves his stress by beating a 6-year-old girl up. Sadly, in India, women are spoken of and treated as nature's stress relievers for men. Girls were not born to serve as punching bags when boys feel frustrated, or rape when they feel insecure. And it is time parents and, more importantly, mothers stop their sons and tell them that. Ever since I can remember, conversations around me have always focused on what makes other people different from me. Where they live, what they eat, who they consort with, what they wear, who they pray to. Together, we need to stop harping on our differences and teach children of the million things that make us alike, across gender, across nationality, across race, and across religion. Boys and girls are always taught of the stark differences between gender. The toys you have to play with, the colors you need to associate yourselves with, the appropriate reactions to times you want to cry, etc., etc. A common thing I hear being told to boys when they misbehave with girls is, don't do it. She's someone's wife, daughter, or mother. Can men only relate to men? Is that some sort of a rule? Is he only going to stop when he thinks of the misery that his actions are going to cause to the girl's brother, husband, or father? Can he not stop because he can relate to the pain of the girl? Since when has it become so difficult for us to relate to each other on basic human grounds? Parents need to consciously stop with the rigid demarcations gender, the rigid rules of what is right and what is wrong. Let's face it, life is not fair. There is inequity even in the natural coincidence of birth, the coincidence of which family you're born into. Life is not the same for everyone. If it was, it would be easy. We could have given our children a manual with a table of contents, and they could look up answers with appropriate reactions to every tough decision in life. But life is a culmination of tough decisions, which is why it is so important that we teach children how nothing is black or white. Most of it is gray. We teach them to be empathetic human beings that make decisions only after understanding the situational variables. As a generation, I think we are losing our ability to question. Our children are always taught never to question. Never question your parents, never question societal rules, never question the government, never question the education system, and never question religion. But if people didn't question, we would have lost out on so much knowledge. If Newton hadn't asked why the apple fell and didn't float, we wouldn't know of gravity. If the Wright brothers didn't wonder why we can't fly like birds, we wouldn't have aeroplanes. We would have lost out on electricity, on the internet, and the knowledge of the universe. So let's please teach our children of the yin and the yang. Encourage them to ask questions and question the right things. I'd like to end with accepting that the fight to gender equality is not one that women can fight alone. We need all the help we can get. And it is a fight that will not only benefit the women, but will also benefit the men. When one girl embraces her strength, a boy who does not fit into this macho stereotype will break free. When one girl steps out to work, a boy who is bogged down by the responsibility of feeding his entire family will feel relief. When we stop asking our daughters to compromise and adapt, we will also empower our sons. Thank you.